All right, everyone, two different stories we're tackling today, first of which has to do with a potential new feature for the next generation Nintendo hardware. Whatever it may be, there is a new law that is passed in the European Union that will require an interesting feature for all portable handheld consoles to have, and this would definitely fit the build for whatever Nintendo is cooking up with their next-gen hardware. Then the big talking point for today's video has to do with the truth about what is going on with Activision Blizzard games potentially headed to the Nintendo Switch past the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, because there's one particular article making the rounds online right now, and depending on if you just read the headline and take it at face value or deep dive what is actually said in the documents, you might get two completely different conclusions, and we need to get on the same page with all of those details right now. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, we're going through two different stories, and we got to kick it off right away with the EU passing a brand new law that will require portable handhelds to have a removable battery by 2027. As you can see the following post over on My Nintendo News, which reads, EU handheld consoles will be required to have replaceable batteries by 2027. The European Union has set a new regulation for handheld game consoles such as the Nintendo Switch and Steam Deck, and will require them to have replaceable batteries from 2027. This will almost certainly apply to the successor to the Switch if Nintendo takes that a similar route with its next generation hardware, and also whatever Valve is cooking up next. Games industry says that manufacturers will be required to make batteries accessible for consumers using commercially available or specialized tools and provide instructions and safety information. Android Central also says that tablets and phones will be required to have replaceable batteries by 2027. So this is something I did not see coming, and as somebody who has kept up to date with all of the various phones and mobile devices over the years, and now seeing this go towards consoles in the future, like the future next-gen Nintendo hardware, I do think it's a nice move to have a replaceable battery. Once your battery degrades in whatever device you are using, not only will you get potentially worse battery life, but sometimes if you are on an Apple device, you actually get worse performance because they're trying to extend the life of the battery to be somewhat manageable or get you through a full day on a single charge, which inherently will ramp down the processor power. I don't necessarily know that Nintendo does anything like that on the Switch, and they really haven't had to worry about it up to this point, with the Switch still being their latest device on the marketplace, but it does hint to them potentially wanting to get ahead of this thing, because this will affect, from my understanding, devices being manufactured and sold in 2027 and beyond, and you would likely expect that the next generation Nintendo Switch would, or whatever Nintendo has up their sleeves next, providing it is of course a hybrid console, would still be sold and manufactured in 2027, so they would need to hop ahead of this and create some kind of user accessible removable battery, and they have to make it simple enough for the average consumer to be able to do this work themselves. So they can't hide it behind some soldering job or make it very difficult to access the battery. This could be something like a removable backplate, which has that older Android phone style battery like Samsung used to do in the Galaxy devices, and you can just pop it out. There's a few connector pins and then replace it back in. That's kind of what I'm picturing. It'll be interesting to see how all of the tech manufacturers from various different parts of the industry tackle this, but this is probably a feature, a interesting upgrade, if you will, to the feature set of the next generation Nintendo console, whatever it may be. But make sure you let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this news. Now, the other story we're talking about today has to once again do with this ongoing Activision Blizzard plus Microsoft merger that seems like it's a battle that will never end, but we do know that Nintendo has big implications if this thing does indeed go through, because at the very least, we have known up to this point in time, there is a signed binding 10-year legal agreement between Nintendo and Microsoft that post the merger closing, they will support Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch for the next 10 years. Now, following the closing of the FTC versus Microsoft trial, there was a lot of public legal documents that have been filed that you can go look at yourself online, and some websites are picking this up and typing up some very interesting headlines around it, and they are quickly picking up steam online, and that's why we need to break down what the truth of this situation actually is, because while I am cautiously optimistic that we will see a wide variety, if not the mass majority, of every single Activision Blizzard game that is being developed today or in the future make it to Nintendo hardware, whether it be on the Switch or the next gen console, I think we will see a lot of support for various Activision Blizzard franchises. But this claim from this particular article is saying the word all, and we need to break this down together. As you can see over on Xputer, the headline reads, Nintendo's 10-year deal with Microsoft covers all future Activision Blizzard games. It seems like Sony got the short end of the stick. Earlier this year, Microsoft and Nintendo closed a deal to bring Call of Duty entries on the Switch and the next consoles after the merger eventually locks. It seems like there is much more to the contract than most gamers initially thought. The giant company is planning to also bring other Activision Blizzard entries on the Nintendo consoles, which is far different than the deal that Sony signed some time ago to keep Call of Duty titles on the platform. Microsoft stated that it is contractually obligated to release all future Activision Blizzard titles on the Nintendo platforms. The conglomerate reiterated its contract with Nintendo in the recently published documents by the U.S. District Court from the trials against the Federal Trade Commission. As per the aforesaid deal between the companies, Nintendo will receive a wide variety of Activision Blizzard content in the future, unlike Sony. Now, this is the important quote to focus on, because this is actually what this entire article is based off of, and it's coming from the legal document itself, and it says Nintendo has a contractual right to obtain Activision content post-merger, including Call of Duty, as mentioned in the pages 74 and 120. Now, upon closer inspection of this story, I want to highlight a back and forth between Xputer and a user on Twitter who was replying to them tweeting out this massive news that I interestingly did not see any other major news sites reporting on. And Billy over on Twitter says, oddly, the article states all future Activision Blizzard titles, but I have yet to identify any place where it states all in the link given, nor any mention of anything really outside of COD. Would be nice to have source. Now, Xputer replies to that, you are right, it doesn't say all, which is why we didn't quote them for it. It says Activision content, which could mean either all content or only some. Still, that was a poor choice of words by us. We apologize if it created any misunderstanding. So while I would love to report that for sure 100% certainty with fact at this point that we will have every single Activision Blizzard published game for the next 10 years on whatever future Nintendo consoles are around the corner and ready to hit the market, that is unfortunately not the case in terms of the official wording in the legal document. Now, it does say Activision content, including Call of Duty, so for sure COD is on the table. We already know that. That's the title you can definitely write home about and say will be on Nintendo platforms, but what you cannot say is that everything else will automatically be ported to Nintendo and specifically held back from Sony. We don't have that kind of information at this point in time, and again, I am cautiously optimistic that Microsoft has a very good working relationship with Nintendo and will want to bring over the mass majority of Activision Blizzard content to the platform to sell to yet another user base that will likely be extremely successful on the successor to the Switch. In addition to whatever games they can get running on the current Switch today, they have a sitting fan base of 125 plus million users just ready to play any of Activision Blizzard's content. There's a ton of games that make sense. Diablo 4 is selling like hotcakes and would be a perfect fit on something like a hybrid console that you could play at home or on the go, and we may indeed see that make it to the successor to the Switch, or even a version at some point released on the current Switch. Crash Bandicoot today sells extremely well on the Switch. There's no reason to hold back Tony Hawk from getting its return to gaming if it is indeed in the holster from Switch. In fact, I think it will be supported on this current console and whatever is next if we do indeed see that series make a return, amongst many others. But if you are seeing claims online circulating from various different news outlets and YouTube channels that this is a done deal and Nintendo has a signed binding legal 10-year agreement that they're getting everything from Activision Blizzard for the next 10 years, that's not actually what's said from Microsoft themselves. All of that said, I am personally very ready to see this deal ultimately wrap up and see what it really turns into long term for us Nintendo gamers as we get a clearer picture of where Microsoft wants to go with the navigation of Activision Blizzard content in a post-merger world. But I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video on both the different stories we talked about today. How do you feel about the EU passing the law for removable batteries for portable consoles? And do you think it will indeed affect whatever's next for next-gen Nintendo hardware? And are you a fan of it or not? Then definitely let me know which Activision Blizzard games you think will likely make it to the Switch and whatever is next for Nintendo, in addition to which ones you think may be left as Microsoft exclusives. Or do you think that this legal document and the wording behind it is referencing that every game is indeed coming from Activision Blizzard on Nintendo hardware for the next 10 years? And bonus question, which dead Activision Blizzard franchises would you like to see come back in a post-merger world in the future? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.